Hi, this is Pete Ekman with the RoboZone podcast. It's been a hot minute, but that's because we now have a new center stage game for FTC. We're talking about FTC. We're talking about reaction to the FTC game, talking with these two guys, however you guys are, however this is recording, it's side to side or diagonal, or we're going to start dancing. Dave will do his patented Russell shuffle at the end, because we always do that. But we won't talk about center stage. So let's get through with the introductions. We'll go with David first. David, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm David Russell, a mentor with the Iron Dams. They call me Coach Bob.
I wonder why.
Yeah.
Wonder why. But not only that, you're an FRC mentor too for
I am. I'm an FRC mentor for the Twisted Doubles and the Twisted Angels.
Yeah, not too shabby of a season last year. Guys, if you're watching this, go look it up. They did pretty well.
They did pretty good.
Pretty well. And there we have Ed. Ed, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Ed Wynne. I'm the high school coach of the Hartland Electro Eagles. I'm also the leading program mentor for our FTC teams. We have 3 of them, so I'm busy all the time.
Yeah, you don't have an off season. There's no such thing as an off season.
I call it an off season, but I don't actually get to go home. I'm still always here. It's more just something to make me feel better that like it's not the real season, because I could personally fail and it would be my responsibility.
But see, David, Ed is one of the most reserved coaches, I would say. He's blurring his background, but what he's saying is they got this new multi-million-dollar robotics facility that's blurred in his background that FTC and FRC uses.
Actually, what I'm not saying is there's a bunch of FTC kids across the room working on stuff, and I asked them to be quiet. So hopefully there won't be any loud outbursts while I'm doing this.
Well, it's robotics season. We're used to that. So
yeah, they're not giving me a whole room just to have this interview. They're still working on their robots.
So what we're here to talk about has to do with some of these little things, these little pixels. I love 3D printing, and I love the people out there that put these out there so we can 3D print them. These are going to David tomorrow, in fact, for his team. But we're talking about pixels. We're talking about center stage. So let's just rip the Band-Aid off, David. Give me your first impression of center stage when you saw the release video.
Very first thing that I thought is, ooh, this is going to be a tough game. And then when we actually started digging into it, I think it's not as tough as it initially looks. Now, we'll see if I'm right or wrong once we get into competition season, but I was real nervous regarding picking up little half-inch tall pixels off the ground, which I'm still a little nervous about that. And then the drones, trying to land those right up against that wall, I think is going to be a trick and a half. So we'll see.
So tough as in the mechanics of the game, or tough as in the scoring of the game, or tough as in you have to watch for your competition?
I think kind of it was going to be difficult to build a robot that can do all this stuff.
Okay. Makes
sense. At this stage of the game, I try not to think about other robots too much, because it doesn't matter yet. True.
I think when we talk about FRC, of course, strategy dictates design. And I think about what the best robot for an alliance would be, not an independent robot, right? Because you want to be that. FRC is different than FTC because you have 2 teams at FTC, 3 FRC, and I always try to think how we can maximize the points for the alliance. At least that's how I think. Ed, what did you think about the game right when it was released?
My first reaction was, oh boy, there's a lot going on there. That was actually my second and third reaction when people kept asking me about it. There's some things that I actually really like. But it in a lot of ways, it actually feels like the FRC game from last year. This is a relay game. You're basically running back and forth across the field. You're getting things, which felt a lot like last year in FRC. At the end, you have to hang. FRC loves hanging. So, basically, we've been having a bunch of strategy discussions. We've been talking about how we do things. And usually I'm kind of doing I don't know. Whereas in this one, I can say, well, this is how we did it on the high school last year. And of course, all my ideas are getting rejected because they want to do their own thing. Which in any given year, that's a good thing. But I'm basically forcing a bunch of the kids to watch videos like, look, there's robots that have to do this. Go get ideas. So I think the game is actually kind of nice in that it's doing very similar things to other games that we have had, that there's lots of examples of robots to go and draw from. But this game's different enough that you can't do stuff direct. You actually have to come up with your own spin on it. There's tons and tons of examples on how to do all of this stuff. So even though there is a lot going on, I think we're going to see some really cool robots. We're going to see a bunch of very, very different designs to basically kind of get the same things done. And I think this game is going to be phenomenal to watch. So I'm looking forward to it.
So normally in the past, at least what First says is a lot of what the FTC game or elements of FTC game will be in the FRC game. I think this was like a reversal where a lot of what we did in FRC is now going to FTC, which my mind's, always wondering what our FRC game is going to be like. So are we going to have similar things, to that? So the first thing when I saw one of these, at least when I printed it, this reminded me of Steamworks.
That's what I thought too.
When we had to pick the gears.
Oh, the gears. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you're right, Ed. If there's teams that are listening to this right now, go look at some of those robots that scooped things off the ground, picked them up, and then put them on. I mean, there's ideas out there all over the place.
Yep.
For that year. And then the whole hanging, I'm glad I know we've had elements of it in past FTC games, but a clear hanging at the end game, and then maybe hanging and then shooting your drone over the top. It's kind of cool. We've seen that.
I got to give my big spiel about torsion springs and winches, and like I've never got to do that for FTC before.
So which are we thinking is the better option? Shooting the drone first and then climbing, or climbing and shooting the drone while
up?
hanging?
And then my opinion, I would pull up and then shoot, because at least you're getting the points for pulling up rather than concentrating on the shot and then trying to pull up.
So my counter to that is you don't know whether or not you're going to be the robot that gets to climb. You know that you're going to get to shoot the drone. So if you're shooting every single time from the same location, you'll have more consistency.
I like your devil's advocate way of looking at that.
I would agree with that, except your drone is a piece of folded paper, which will age poorly. So I'm skeptical that we're going to have high reliability on the drones. I might be wrong, and the kids are arguing with me. They think it's going to be a complete non-issue. They're just going to have a suitcase full of these things, and when one gets bent, they're going to pull out the next one. But
that's what we're doing.
David's got a suitcase. He's got a suitcase.
Yeah.
So we basically run 2 experiments, and in both of them, the kids can't control themselves from picking up the airplanes and throwing them and getting in a fight with each other and completely destroying them. So we got to get a handle on that, but I think that's doable. It's it's an early setback.
So I saw the game. I watched it the day it was released. Go figure. I don't coach FR or FTC, but I'm always in I can't wait for FRC season, and this is kind of like this is the this is the appetizer to the full meal and then dessert that FRC season is. But one of the things I thought of was there was a release video, and then there was a lady that kind of explained a little bit of things. And the first thing, I know mentors that are very strategy oriented, and they're going, how can I fold a piece of paper? Am I going to use cardstock? Is there any secret sauce to that? Are they going to measure the thickness of the paper for the drone? Now, I did not read the rules because I'm not an FTC coach.
It's very specific on what paper you can use.
Yep.
Oh,
you can't use cardstock. It's too heavy. You can't cut. It has to be one continuous fold.
One continuous.
So we had a kid that actually had a great idea. He was like, we have to use paper But if we cut like a stringer out, then we could have it have a tail, and we could keep the tail attached to the robot. So we throw the plane, it hits the end, it goes ding, and then falls right in the first zone and gets the most points. But you can't do that.
You can't do that.
So now the way that I was reading continuous piece of paper was that it couldn't be attached together somewheres. It didn't say, to my understanding, that it couldn't have cuts in.
Interesting. So I've tasked my kids to get on the forums to get an answer. I mean, because if you can do this, it's a huge advantage. But my guess is they're going to say no.
Yeah.
Who knows though? Who knows? We all mentors think outside. How can you do everything but within the lines?
Well,
the very gray lines sometimes that are the FTC and FRC rules. So let's break the game down a little bit. Okay. First initial thoughts. So let's talk about autonomous. My team, the high school team, the Robo Beavers, which is the successor to the Iron Dames, right? That's our FTC team. We went ahead and did a whole strategy dictates design session last Thursday after the release. And we broke it down same way we break down an FRC season. How can we maximize points? We even gave it to the mentors. I sent it to Jeremy, David, so he's got it. Of where the maximize, maybe I sent it to you too. Where the maximized points are in autonomous, I think, just like it wasn't Power Up, the one with the milk crates for FRC. Which one was it? The scales?
That was Power Up.
Okay.
Power Up. Yeah.
Power Up. Everything was won in autonomous, pretty much. Right.
Mhm.
So
you got a huge advantage. You had to try hard to lose it later.
So is that true? This year, the majority, if you can do really good autonomous routines, you're in pretty good condition or pretty good.
It gives you a leg up. It gives you a big leg up. You can get 40 points in autonomous.
I don't know that I have ever seen a game that it wasn't autonomous being a big deal. Now, to what scale it's depended, but it's always been, if you're in the lead in autonomous, you've got the lead, you just have to hold it. So
right.
I think that continues to apply here.
But in Power Up, it wasn't even a joke. I mean, if you were up so far, there was no way you could catch it up. You couldn't catch anyone in the FRC season. So when the kids were breaking it down, they're like, Coach, if they have a really good autonomous routines, I don't know how anyone could catch them.
Yeah.
So
we basically had a policy here at Hartland the last, 8 years that I've basically been helping seriously. And it's most games in the first 2 weeks of the season are won in autonomous. And it's not, it's not like the first part of the season's any different than the last part of the season. It's that most teams don't have a very strong autonomous at the beginning. And as the season unfolds, they make it better and better and better. So we spend a huge amount of time as soon as we can hitting week one with a strong autonomous. And that's been a very successful strategy for us.
So question about that. Last FRC season, right? I call it the teeter-totter effect, which is you go up and you balance, right? Do you think they made less importance of autonomous for that game? I know we're talking about we're recording an FTC reaction, but we're talking about FRC.
FRC.
It just happens, right? But last year's game didn't seem that almost anyone, at least in week 1 and 2, even low source teams could figure out how to do the teeter-totter and do that, right? Or the charging station.
It was less than in previous years. I mean, there were previous years where you could have one robot do an amazing autonomous and it carried the whole alliance. And last year, you had to have all the robots kind of do their part. And that just kind of got you good. I mean, you'd come out with like 45 points kind of.
I don't know. David can quote this because he had there was a certain team he's associated with that would deliver three items in auton and balance.
That's pretty good.
So
better than we ever did.
Yeah, I don't remember the number of points it was exactly, but again, I'm going to play devil's advocate on this. I think that autonomous played a big role this year because, I mean, the Twisted Devils, we had a good robot. I'm not going to downplay that at all. But the best part of our robot was our autonomous. And that showed in the results of winning all of our district events.
I was gonna say you did pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And personally, I think that mostly comes down to our autonomous.
If you start out on top, it's easier to stay on top.
Yeah.
Right.
A great autonomous starts you out on top.
Yeah. So let's talk about autonomous a little bit more, right? How important is vision this year with autonomous FTC level?
So if you'd asked me yesterday, I would have said something completely different, but I just spent 3 hours talking to middle school kids about how to do find the spike that has, the game element on it. And they actually surprised me. They came up with 2 different ideas that were good that do not involve vision on how to do it.
Interesting.
So, yeah, I think vision's the best way to do it.
Mhm.
But I think you could probably pull off a really good autonomous without vision this year.
I think that's kind of the rule of thumb is you're always going to be better off with vision.
Yeah.
But there's always going to be some way to do it without. And I think that's kind of intentional by First is to give the learning curve for new teams or teams who haven't developed the skills to implement vision programming versus encouraging teams to learn that for an advantage in future seasons. So we're giving it a shot for the first time this year. We're going to try and get vision going. And I'm excited to see how it works. And maybe we'll end up switching to a non-vision option. I'm hoping not, but we'll see.
So question, you don't have to give up your secret sauce, Ed, of your stuff, but
I'm actually really happy to talk about it.
Okay. So tell us about the ideas they had.
Okay. So last year we cheated. Well, we didn't cheat. We ignored the challenge and solved it in a different way. So basically you had the cone, which you could put your own picture on.
Yeah.
And First wanted you to use either TensorFlow or Vuforia to do object recognition on the cone to figure out which picture was facing. But you got to choose your own picture. So we hit on fairly early, you could just do a picture of a solid color that was different on all 3 sides and didn't naturally occur on the field. Then you point the camera down and you just do a quick histogram for one of those 3 colors that doesn't occur on the field in any other way. And if you get any sort of spike, you're like, aha, that one.
Okay.
And you can do that in setup. It doesn't need any motion, so the kids literally can put the robot on the field and see on the driver's station, oh, the robot thinks it's that. So it was easily verifiable. We could actually get the kids to code the entire thing by hand instead of using a complicated library, which I like because it gives them experience.
For
and
FRC.
You just don't do stuff like that anymore. So I thought that was kind of like a throwback to, 5-6 years ago when you weren't doing neural networks and TensorFlow and all this stuff. So we basically came at this year of saying, could we do the same thing?
Okay.
And the first answer was no, because your game element has to be the same color as the tape. If you're on the red side, it's got to be red. At your blue side, you're blue. So you can't pick like a color that you could easily pick out.
Gotcha.
But then the kids hit on the fact that it's bigger than the tape. So you could do something like blob detection.
Okay.
So, and there's lots of library code that's easy to kind of code by hand. So you just need to find something
that's taller than the tape.
Bigger than the tape.
Okay.
One of the pieces of tape is horizontal, like the other 2 are vertical. So like if you scanned at a 45 and you went across something that was more than 2 inches wide, it's probably something you put there. So ideas like that are what we're throwing around.
Mm-hmm.
And it's largely, one of our teams last year used object recognition, and it was just horribly unreliable based on like different lighting. It worked great over here, and then they went to a tournament that had lots of natural light, and it was horribly unreliable.
Okay.
So we're battle scarred on that. But also, I mean, we talked out like using distance sensors, just kind of like a LiDAR scan. And if you do it close to the floor, there's nothing in front of you except what you put there.
Right.
So, you know, if you kind of graph a distance peak, it's like, oh, there's nothing. Whoop, there's something there. Okay, well that's where your game element has to be. You know, and that's
Yes.
fast. So stuff like that.
Especially with the lighting issues that we had at state last year.
Yeah.
I think it's put a bad taste in everybody's mouth for that.
Yeah. So,
So
we are
if you-
actively not doing object recognition.
Mhm.
We might use a camera, we might use distance. I mean, we've got 3 teams. I wouldn't be surprised if we try both of those.
Okay.
across.
So if you do the LiDAR distance version of your solution, you can also use that for game piece pickup too, right?
You can.
You can get 2 for 1.
It's dual purpose. You can
Right.
tell if there's something in front of you. When you're going front to back, especially in autonomous, you could sense if your alliance partner's sitting right in your way and not plow into them and smash your intake. So there's all sorts of good follow-on benefits for having a good distance sensor on the front of your robot.
That's cool. So the other things about autonomous I saw were the mini April tags. Now we used April tags last year, pretty big ones. So that was very interesting. So in that case, you would need full vision to read that April tag. You couldn't do that with a LiDAR sensor.
That is correct.
So
You could theoretically get that with encoder ticks, though.
oh,
Well, if your robot knows where it is.
Yeah.
right.
Um,
right.
And honestly, so we are all in on odometry this year.
Mhm.
We all kind of sat down on day 1 and we said, look, this is how the high school does it. And it gives you this advantage, this advantage, this advantage. And basically almost to a person, the FTC kids were like, we want to do that. So for better or worse, we've never tried to do odometry with 3 teams. This might be mentor overload and be a horrible failure, but we're giving it a go.
So the other when we were breaking this down, the other thing that kids were talking about is, Coach, what drive? They asked me what drive you would, you know, if I was the FTC team, what would I do? And I probably said, well, we built a swerve drive in the off season, and we're looking forward to using that in FRC, but in FTC, there's not really there. I've seen maybe one robot, and I don't think it was even a competition. They had a swerve drive at FTC, just based upon the rules and the motors and that type of thing. But I tell them probably do a macadam drive, right? You strafing side to side, placing, you know, these pieces, and there's, you know, the pixel formations and that type of thing. So I said that. So we talked about autonomous. Let's talk about teleop. I call teleop. I can't remember the term they used.
Driver control, period.
Driver control. I just call teleop, whatever, because that's what we do at the high school level. So, you know, picking up, what I thought was very interesting is the pixel formations now. So in the case of, you guys can pick it up however, I mean, what did you guys talk about, David, about picking these up, how to pick these up? Have you guys come up with that solution yet?
Yeah, so our current plan is taking some of those green squishy wheels, spinning them opposing to each other, sucking it in and throwing it up onto our basically onto a belt.
Turn the lights on.
This only happens when we're really I'm leaving this in too. So
Okay.
So compliant wheels, green compliant wheels.
Use those compliant wheels, throwing them onto a belt that would take it up to our placing mechanism.
Oh, okay. So in one side, out the other side, in through the front, out through the back.
That's our current plan. Yep.
Okay. Ed, what did you guys talk about as far as intakes? Or
very similar, actually. So I don't think the green gummy wheels came up, but basically in years past, we've taken the bigger gummy wheels and cut the outer ring off. So you've got like the paddle wheel.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
I know that one of our teams is talking about using those, but in essentially the same config he was just talking about. ingesting on one side, transferring it through the robot into a fixed position where some kind of arm can just go chink, grab, chink, place, chink, grab. They've had a couple of talks about what the ingest would look like. Whether it just needs to be active on the top side with a feeder, or if you need something on the bottom with the counter rotating to kind of just plow into something and pop it up in the robot. Many tests are being performed right now. They're trying to figure out the right mix and whether that's worth it.
See, we're doing a left and right wheels. That way, the stacks in the field, we can pull out the bottom of that stack.
And just right?
Yep.
2 at a time. Yeah, that
Yep.
makes sense.
Interesting.
Are you using the 4-inch? Are you using 2-inch, David?
We currently have the 2-inch on there. I'm not sure. We're looking into if we can find 3-inch because neither 4 nor 2 is ideal at the moment.
I would agree.
You can always 3D print them, right?
Yeah.
Ninja Flex works great.
David's high school team gave me the print for what's that material, Dave?
TPU.
TPU. And we make our treads for our swerve drive from that TPU, and it works amazingly. So and you can softness and all that stuff too. It's kind of grippy. So maybe you can print some of those, David. And
Maybe.
try 3-inch.
Maybe.
So the placement is, so I think Ed, what you and David both said, some coming in, intake in one way and delivering it, out the back. That's also something that's done in FRC a lot. I've seen a lot of common, again, anyone that's watching this, go look at robots from Steamworks. They did a lot of that stuff. Especially because, kind of a similar shaped object, although it was like this. So, and then just you'll have to do a lot of driver's practice. I'm sure you guys would agree with for that type of stuff.
Yep.
What else in Teleapp? Is there any secret sauce in Teleapp, or is just pick them up and deliver them as fast as you can?
Well, so I did want to talk about drivetrain that you were talking about.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a contentious subject in the iron dams.
Yeah.
We kind of came down to 2 options: Mecanum, tank treads. They only want to do tank treads because I am just notorious for hating tank treads.
So you're talking actual treads, not just a drop center tank chassis.
Yeah, actual treads. See,
interesting.
My opinion is there is no situation that treads are better than anything else. If you're trying to get over obstacles, you use the pneumatic wheels. If you're trying to be agile, you use mecanums. Treads are a waste, in my opinion, and I had to get that on the air.
Treads are hard to maneuver.
Yeah. Well, so before I started mentoring the iron dams, they every year did treads. And it was just kind of the head coach is a chiropractor and he just doesn't know what else to do. He's like, tank treads are cool. Hey kids, what do you think about tank treads? And they're like, yeah, that's cool. So that's what he bought, and that's what they put on everything. And then halfway through 2 years ago season is when I started helping with them. And I was like, hey, our biggest problem on this robot is these tank treads. So
watch.
Yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
Watch, the FRC season will lend itself to tank treads. I'm just
see that's where you're wrong though, because there's no situation that tank treads are better. I'm gonna have the tank tread as a prior military guy. I like tank treads. I mean, I've been around it, right? Even in the Navy. But what about the year that we had the Portcullis
Stronghold?
Stronghold.
Yeah.
Stronghold was a year that you could use tank treads pretty well.
You
That was the
could,
last year we used.
but you would be better off using pneumatic tires.
Depending on your resources, money.
Oh,
Just saying.
I don't think pneumatic tires are more expensive than tank treads.
No, I'm saying
they
that if
don't have to be.
no. But I'm saying there are certain teams that don't have a lot of money at all, and they have to reuse or retread. Oh, I'm going to use this. You have to retread your robot to make sure that you can use the stuff, right? I mean, there are some teams that don't have a lot of resources.
Sure. But in that case, they're taking the less ideal option. It's
He's not wrong.
Yeah.
So my sorry, my memory of Stronghold, which is the last time we used tank treads, and it was to get over all this stuff. We didn't have a turret. So our shooter, basically, when you got up next to the tower, you had to turn the robot to aim it.
Yes.
And you can't make fine precision small movements with tank treads. It's terrible.
Well, about tank drive is the same way though.
Well, not really, because if you have like a drop center tank drive, you're not scraping something against the ground to get the robot to move 2 degrees.
True.
So we basically were like, oh, tank treads will make it super easy to get over all this stuff. And it did. But then we spent weeks trying to fine tune the shooter to actually get it pointing right at the hole. And the tank treads were terrible for that, great for this other thing.
But I know your targeting system now, Ed. I think you could pull that same game off now with tank treads and score from anywhere.
But I'm older and smarter now.
so just
It's
because
because
you
I've done
can.
it wrong all the ways. I now know more ways to do it right.
No worries.
Yeah. So what you're saying is you can do well even with a handicap. That's what you just told him. So
yeah.
If we were to replay that game again, yes.
If we were to redo that game and I was the coach and had input, which I wasn't at the time, I would do pneumatic tires. Because I walked around and I looked at a bunch of these robots that were just flying over the obstacles. And I was going, ooh, big pneumatic tires. We should have done that. Like during that season, I was thinking that. So when he just said that, I'm like, yep.
I'll give you this, Pete. If they ever decide to fill the field with sand, then maybe.
What about a water game?
Water game, you're going to use paddles.
No.
Right.
You're going to borrow, I can't remember the car they had that you could drive right into the water and had a little propeller on the back of it.
Yeah, you know what wheels those had? Pneumatic tires.
Okay, pneumatic tires for the win. We will leave that one alone. Let's talk about the end game. Everyone loves end game, right?
Okay.
Because it's the fun part, right? My prediction for FRC this year, you'll probably be wrong. One or two things. I either think it's gonna be another shooting game with a round ball, or I hope it's a frisbee game. I didn't get to compete with the frisbees, but I want to, and I think that would be cool.
Won't be.
Let's do that.
It won't be.
Oh, whatever.
Frisbees are a terrible game element. I hope I never see him again.
It'd be better than a football, Ed.
Actually, my worst case game element were those stupid yellow foam balls.
And we did it.
It was awful. That
Oh,
was we
mine
got
was-
like 4 different like ingest mechanisms because
Yeah.
everything we tried they would jam.
I
Before
don't
that-
think they're going to do frisbees again because of. I think that they were kind of a safety issue that they just didn't think of before kicking off the game, and then realized it afterward that some people, like the Twisted Devils, might just amp up max power on these motors and crack the plastic behind the chains.
But they are a heavy game element that you're throwing and they fly well.
Well,
So-
what?
Yeah,
Yeah. What about the big tennis balls? I saw a couple people catch
Okay.
one to the knocker on that one.
it's a whole
I
lot better
got
to get hit by a
straight
big
face a couple of
inflatable
times.
ball than a hard piece of plastic.
True. Give you that. Okay. Back to endgame. Let's talk about center stage endgame, right? We now have a chin up element. I call it the chin up element, just come up and pull up. Right.
Uh-huh.
We kind of discussed the whole drone aspect of when to throw the drone. I still stick by, I think my primary choice would be to pull up and then shoot it. because I can guaranteeing some points rather than no points. Should my drone go off into some direction? But where do you think the majority of the points in endgame will be scored, David?
I think that's a good question because there's a whole lot more potential with the drones. You've got 2 robots potentially shooting drones. But I think it's more difficult to score large amount of points because you could just get a flat 0 from the drone if you go too far. But I think I am going to say we're going to get more points from drones scored in the game than we will from the climb.
I think eventually that will happen. I don't know if it's going to start that way. My prediction, and this again, it goes back to kind of how some of the FRC teams do it, is that everybody kind of does it, but 1 or 2 teams hits on a great idea, and then the next time you see all the other teams, they've all copied that idea.
It's called cheesecake.
I think that's going to happen this year. I think some team is going to hit on a really cool way to make like a drone that like flies in a circle. So it like goes out and like hits the outside of the field wall and perfectly falls there or something.
Well, there's instructions.
Them everywhere.
There's instructions for how to fold a paper airplane that does that online.
But
All they have to do is research it.
Hard part.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, another FRC reference, go figure. Deep Space, Striker, right here, right down the road, designed a suction mechanism that went up and
we copied it.
Hab 3. Well, not only you, and you didn't copy it, you borrowed it and iterated off it. And then some other teams that won championships with them did the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So
Brighton did it. We actually copied it from Brighton, but it was a brilliant idea. It was one of those ones, if you had suggested it to me early in the season, I would have been like, that won't work. And then I saw a robot do it and I'm like, that is freaking genius.
Yep.
And it was easy. It didn't seem like it should work as well as it does. And it did.
Yeah. So maybe we'll see something like that this year. But back to your comment, David, right? The reason I said I'd want to chin up and then throw the drone is that at least I'm successfully doing the lifting, right? As well as if my partner can't lift their robot off the ground, at least I have that for the alliance, right?
Yeah. See, you've got 30 seconds of endgame. I don't think it takes very long to throw a drone. At least not the methods that we're looking at. Because we've got kind of 2 options that we've seen is like a pitching machine and a rubber band launcher.
Yeah.
Neither of those takes very long. You lose maybe a second on your climb time.
Right.
I would actually say if you do it right, you don't lose any time. You do it while you're going up.
See, that's my point too. What I'm thinking is like in that because I do FRC, I'm always thinking of what if there's only like 5 points more that's needed? You can grab another game piece, go score it, then go do the pull up, and even at the pull up, you can time it to where it launches it as soon as you hit 0 when you know you're at that point, and then
you're in a known location. If you're on the bar, like that's the okay, I'm right here.
Yep.
If you pull the pin and fire your rubber band, that's your best chance for a reliable, position and everything else. And you can integrate that with the whole action. It doesn't have to be intentful. Every time you pull up on the bar, you fire the drone.
That assumes that you get to climb them.
Well, that's true.
That's true.
You clearly need a second button if you're not the one climbing. But if you are, and this is one of those things is maybe you miss, but it costs you nothing to try. And that was our thing. It's like, regardless of how, where, or when, or what, we're always throwing the drone. Because nothing, or we get extra points.
Yes.
Right.
So Ed, go ahead.
On that topic, something that yesterday in our meeting kind of came up a bit is hanging on to the drone the entire match. May end up being more of a trick than
Yeah.
what you might initially
I tried
think.
to raise this conversation. I
initially
tried to
think.
raise this conversation with a couple of students and they were like, it's not going to be a problem. And I'm like, I don't know. I think you're going to need a specialized deployment mechanism that protects this. Because if something
Yeah.
hits, you get an extra crinkle, it's not going where you think it's going.
Right.
We're making a 3D printed aircraft carrier that it's going to go inside of.
Yeah.
And our launching mechanism will be in there.
We've used words like mortar.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see some of these games. Now, I don't know if you guys, I am a serial watcher of Robot in 3 days, especially in FRC season. But I did watch some FTC Robot in 24 hours or whatever it was, that they built robots. And I thought some of the ideas they were coming up with were amazing. I always, to the teams that I'm on, I always say, kids, go out and look at the Robot in 3 days. If we're stumped, go out there and look. Because you can minimize the amount of failures that you have. You could say, we have this brilliant idea, someone tested it and is done. You don't have to waste a week to try to prove something out because we only have a certain amount of time to build. But do you guys watch the whole Robot in 24 hours or Robot in 72 hours or something like that?
And we actively basically told the kids, like, and kickoff, all right, now here, you've got this, you've got this. Pay attention to them over the next couple of days. When we see you next week, we're talking over ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them will have been tried out and you'll know. And some of the kids are super into it and they were all over it. And other kids were, YouTube's too hard to spell,
Which is shocking, but
right?
Yes.
So yeah, my opinion on that is the robot in, I think it's Robot in 30 hours.
Yeah,
that's what it's called.
Yeah.
It's good for a start point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it is a robot that was built in 30 hours.
Right.
So it's not
there's just
fully
certain
fleshed
things
out.
you can't entertain at all.
Right.
Get them done fast enough.
They don't get an opportunity to do a ton of prototyping and
Sure.
mess with the more niche ideas that may not end up working. Could provide a better solution in the long run if you time into it. So it's a good place to get inspiration from.
Yes.
My opinion on it is to try to avoid this duplicating something from there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a research tool.
It's
right.
research. Yeah, exactly.
So when we're talking about things and it's like, well, what about this? Well, that funny you should say that. There's a video. We know. We don't got to do it. We know.
Right. It helps to eliminate some potential setbacks from things that you guys think might work, but yet someone did that initial work and it's not feasible.
One of the things that I found is we kind of get in these, this might work. Oh no, that won't work. Yeah, I mean, I think it could work. No, it won't work. But if we can find a video that shows someone doing it, it just makes that go away.
Yeah, exactly.
Confirmation
or
discourages. We tried this and it didn't work. So yeah, because everyone thinks they know, but they don't have any data to back it up. Data is a powerful thing and it takes time to get.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. But those that share the data with other people are always great assets.
Hey, I've been free and open. I've talked.
I'm talking about like the LCRA.
Yes. Oh no, it's good. Well, in life at work, I've always said it's good to have smart friends.
Yes.
And in robotics, it's good to have friendly, smart teams. So
I will write that one down for next time. That's a good tagline.
I'm going to get dumped in the dark here.
Yeah. It's 15 minutes. I think it's 15 minutes every time he does this. So
I picked the wrong corner to sit in.
So Ed's at a place where there's still students there. Hopefully not at 9:47, but
I think they all left now. That's why the lights are turning off.
Yeah, they just left you. They didn't even say goodbye.
They didn't.
They just took off. So I'm going to let you guys go. And I want to thank you for being here. This is just the first, coverage of this. I will check in with you guys throughout the season, see how things are going. But what is the one thing, David, as you sign off, first of all, tell us again who you are, what team you're with. And then as you leave, tell us about the one piece of what maybe something that people aren't accounting for this game, like something you guys you noodled in your head and you said, that might be something. Is there anything that you haven't expressed as you sign out?
Yeah, so something that we've been discussing is you are going to kind of be competing with your own alliance for that backdrop during autonomous. So be aware of the possibility of you're both trying to put Pixel in the same spot. Something's got to give. So watch for that. Pay attention. So yeah, I'm David Russell with the Iron Dams. You can follow the Iron Dams on Facebook. That's Iron Dams. Yeah,
And-
that's what I got for you.
And I will refer to you as Coach Bob for the rest of the FTC season.
Okay.
Thank you, David. And Ed, what's your one thing you don't think people are accounting for yet? That was a brilliant one, though, David.
Yeah, no, that was actually that was one of the things we've talked about, is getting out of the way, because there's a lot of points there. But since he took that, I'm going to say speed and congestion.
Okay.
So it's a relay game. A lot of the FTC teams, historically, the game doesn't require you to move fast. It requires precision sometimes, but doesn't necessarily, you're not dashing across the field.
Mm-hmm.
And this game, you're dashing across the field if you're doing it right. Or you're working with a partner, if they have a push bot and they're staging things for you and you're cycling back and forth, but it's very hard to count on. So I'm going to say we're going to see some very, very fast FTC bots from teams who think that they can play the game primarily by themselves without having to depend on a partner. And
that can bite you.
It can. So, I mean, I actually want to say, I think you could pull off not a tank tread chassis, but a tank chassis. I think it would actually work pretty good in this game because you could drive it faster with better control. It's less maneuverable, but if you have a driver knowing what they're doing, they will get across the field a whole lot faster with a lot more control than if you're slamming a 40-pound robot around on McKinnon wheels.
Yep. The one thing that, and we won't have time, we're making this up the next time I get you guys on, is we didn't even talk about the curtain. The thing that can get in your way as you're going back and forth through the field.
See, I wanted to bring that up.
To be shorter.
Yeah,
You've got to be short.
We decided day one there was a height limit that gets you under it, and we've never talked about it again.
No.
Yeah. We're not going to be messing with that.
Yeah. Then we're the same way. Like, it was okay. 14 inches or whatever. We're going under the side, and that's it.
All right. Ed, did you tell us who you were? What team?
Oh, sorry. I'm Ed Wynne, head coach from the Hartland Electro Eagles.
And your FTC teams too.
And the FTC programming mentor.
Three of them. Well, thank you guys. Get some sleep. Hopefully you are conditioning yourself for FRC season now.
Yeah, by sleeping.
Yeah. You guys have a great night. We'll check in with you later in the season.
All right. Thanks, guys.